Have you ever wondered how the fiery spirit of American bourbon was born? It's a question that has intrigued many over the years and sparked debates among whiskey enthusiasts and historians alike. Unraveling the enigma of bourbon is like walking through a labyrinth of stories, theories, and legends. The birthplace of bourbon, much like its creation, is steeped in contention. Some say it was named after Bourbon Street in New Orleans, a city known for its vibrant culture and love for spirits. Others believe it hails from Bourbon County in Kentucky, a region synonymous with horse racing, bluegrass, and of course, bourbon. Yet the exact truth remains as elusive as the perfect bourbon blend. This spirit, with its distinct golden hue and complex flavor profile, is as much a product of folklore as it is of grains, water, and time. In the year 1964, amid the whispers and conjectures, the United States Congress stepped in to settle the debate. They passed a resolution declaring bourbon a distinctive product of the United States. This resolution not only affirmed bourbon's status as a uniquely American spirit, but also laid down strict guidelines for what can be legally called bourbon. It's a journey that has seen bourbon evolve from an unaged corn liquor to a refined spirit savored worldwide. This evolution was guided by the hands of early pioneers and distillers who braved the wilderness, combined innovation with tradition, and created a legacy that we continue to cherish today. The story of bourbon is more than just a history of a drink. It's a testament to the American spirit, to resilience, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to quality. It's a narrative of how a simple grain can be transformed into a spirit that captures the essence of a nation. Bourbon's origins may be shrouded in mystery, but its journey through history is a tale worth telling. So sit back, pour yourself a glass of this amber nectar, and let's unravel the enigma of American bourbon together. Let us embark on a journey back to the late 18th century, to the birth of bourbon. As the United States was taking its first steps as a new nation, settlers from Scots-Irish and other European backgrounds began to populate the frontier lands of Kentucky. These hardy pioneers brought with them a tradition of distilling spirits from grains, a skill they had honed over generations in their homelands. Kentucky, with its fertile soil and pure limestone-filtered water, proved an ideal setting for these settlers to continue their distilling practices, except instead of barley or rye, the grain of choice in this new land was corn, a crop that grew abundantly in the American heartland. By distilling their surplus corn, these settlers were not only able to preserve their harvest, but also create a potent and portable form of sustenance that would keep during the long, harsh winters. Among these early distillers was a certain Reverend Elijah Craig, a Baptist minister with a knack for innovation. Reverend Craig is often credited as the father of bourbon, although the truth of this claim is shrouded in the mists of history. According to one popular story, Craig was the first to age his corn whiskey in charred oak barrels, a process that imbued the spirit with its characteristic amber color and rich, smoky flavor. Whether or not Reverend Craig was truly the first to use charred barrels, there's no denying that this technique became a defining feature of bourbon. The charring process caramelizes the sugars in the wood, which then leach into the whiskey during aging, adding complexity and depth to its flavor profile. This, coupled with the use of corn as the primary grain, set bourbon apart from other types of whiskey and marked the beginning of its unique identity. And so, in the rustic stills of Kentucky, the spirit of bourbon was born. From these humble beginnings, bourbon would go on to become a beloved symbol of American heritage and craftsmanship, a testament to the pioneering spirit of those early settlers who dared to carve out a life in the Kentucky wilderness. How did the humble moonshine evolve into the sophisticated bourbon we know today? It's a tale as smooth as the drink itself, steeped in tradition, innovation, and a healthy dose of American grit. To understand this evolution, we need to dive into the process that makes bourbon distinct. Unlike moonshine, which is essentially raw, unaged whiskey, bourbon undergoes an aging process that gives it its unique character. The heart of bourbon's transformation lies in the use of charred oak barrels. These aren't just any barrels, they're new, white oak barrels, charred on the inside. The bourbon is then left to age, interacting with the charred wood to develop its classic caramel color and complex flavors. This process is more than just aging. It's a dance between the spirit and the wood, a dance that can last anywhere from 2 years to an eternity. But the evolution of moonshine to bourbon wasn't just about the barrels, it was also about quality control. In the late 19th century, unscrupulous distillers were selling poor quality whiskey as bourbon. This led to the Bottled-in Bond Act of 1897, a watershed moment for bourbon. Under this act, bourbon had to be the product of one distillation season, from one distiller at one distillery. It had to be aged in a federally bonded warehouse under government supervision for at least 4 years. And it had to be bottled at exactly 100 proof. Not a drop more, not a drop less. This act was a game changer. It not only protected consumers from low-quality whiskey, but it also set a high standard for bourbon production. It solidified bourbon's reputation as a premium spirit, and it's a standard that still holds to this day. So, the journey from moonshine to bourbon was a journey of transformation. It took the raw spirit of moonshine, refined it through the art of aging, and elevated it through a commitment to quality. It was a journey of transformation, from moonshine to a world-class spirit. Imagine a world where bourbon was illegal. That was America during Prohibition. For 13 long years, from 1920 to 1933, the Volstead Act, better known as Prohibition, put a chokehold on the bourbon industry. This period was a bleak era in American history, where the manufacture, sale, and transportation of intoxicating liquors were outlawed. The bourbon industry, which had been flourishing, was hit hard. Many distilleries shuttered their doors, their copper stills silenced, their aging barrels emptied. The once thriving bourbon industry was reduced to a shadow of its former self. Yet some distilleries managed to stay afloat by switching their production to medicinal whiskey. It's a little-known fact, but even during Prohibition, doctors could prescribe whiskey for a variety of ailments. It was, in essence, a loophole that kept the bourbon spirit alive. One of the most notable contributors to the survival of bourbon during this time was the Walgreens pharmacy chain. Walgreens, which had a mere 20 stores at the start of Prohibition, exploded to over 500 by its end. The secret to their success? You guessed it, medicinal whiskey. This legal workaround allowed them to sell whiskey over the counter to anyone with a prescription. It was a lifeline for the bourbon industry and a comfort to the parched throats of many Americans. Prohibition was a dark chapter in bourbon's history, a time of bootleggers and speakeasies, of Al Capone and the Chicago outfit. But it was also a time of resilience and ingenuity. The industry adapted, found ways to survive and even thrive amidst the adversity. In doing so, it confirmed something we've known all along, that the spirit of bourbon, much like the spirit of the people who love it, is indomitable. Prohibition, while a dark chapter in bourbon's history, could not extinguish its spirit. The bourbon industry weathered the storm, and as we'll see in our next chapter, it emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of this uniquely American spirit. With the repeal of Prohibition, bourbon was ready for a comeback. And what a comeback it was. Not overnight, mind you, but like the slow, steady distillation process itself, the rebirth of bourbon was a gradual affair. In the initial years following Prohibition, the bourbon industry was a shadow of its former self. Distilleries lay dormant, their once busy stills silenced by the long dry spell. But then came the pioneers, the visionaries who saw potential where others saw ruin. Among them a man named James Beauregard Beam, or as we know him, Jim Beam. He dusted off his family's old recipe, and in 1935, just 2 years after the repeal, he was back in business. Beam's determination lit the path for the industry's revival, his bourbon serving as a beacon of resilience in those trying times. Yet the bourbon renaissance was not just about reviving old brands, but also about innovation. Enter Bill Samuel Sr., a sixth-generation distiller with a revolutionary idea. In the mid-1950s, Samuel set out to create a new kind of bourbon. He wanted to make a sipping bourbon, one that was smooth and flavorful, a contrast to the rough and tumble bourbons of the time. The result was Maker's Mark, the first premium bourbon. Samuel's creation was a game-changer. It introduced the concept of premium bourbon, a high-quality artisanal product that commanded a higher price. This not only elevated the perception of bourbon, but also opened up a new market segment, attracting discerning drinkers who appreciated the craftsmanship that went into every bottle. So, from the ashes of Prohibition, the phoenix of bourbon had risen. It was a journey that saw the industry rebuild from the ground up, led by innovators who were not afraid to challenge the status quo. They breathed new life into a tradition that was almost lost, setting the stage for the bourbon boom that we enjoy today. The phoenix of bourbon had risen from the ashes of Prohibition. Today, bourbon is more than just a drink, it's a symbol of American heritage. As we step into the modern era, Bourbon stands tall, not just on the shelves of local liquor stores, but on a global scale. Bourbon's resurgence in the last couple of decades is nothing short of remarkable. It has risen from the ashes of near oblivion to become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Today, it's not just about Kentucky and Tennessee. It's about bourbon distilleries popping up all over the United States and beyond. The bourbon industry has been riding a high wave, with exports reaching over $1 billion in the last few years. The world has developed a taste for this amber spirit, and it is being savored from Tokyo to Toronto, Berlin to Buenos Aires. A particular catalyst in bourbon's growing popularity is the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. This tour de force of bourbon distilleries has been a magnet for bourbon enthusiasts, attracting millions of visitors from around the world. It's not just about tasting the spirit, but about immersing oneself in the rich history and tradition of bourbon making. Moreover, the modern era has seen the rise of the craft bourbon movement. More and more small distilleries are entering the fray, producing small batch and single barrel bourbons that are pushing the boundaries of flavor and complexity. These craft distilleries are not just reviving old recipes, but innovating with new techniques and flavor profiles, adding another layer to the rich tapestry of the bourbon story. In the end, bourbon's appeal lies not just in its taste, but in its story. It's a story of resilience, of tradition, of craftsmanship. It's a story that mirrors the American spirit, bold, innovative, and unyielding. From its rustic roots to its global fame, bourbon is a testament to the spirit of America. We've journeyed through the history of bourbon, but what are the key points to remember? Our tale began with the enigma of American bourbon, a spirit as deeply woven into the fabric of the nation as the stars and stripes themselves. We learned that bourbon's origins are shrouded in mystery, a rich tapestry of tales passed down through the generations. The craft of distilling this amber liquid was brought to America by Irish and Scottish immigrants, and it was nurtured into its unique form in the heartland of Kentucky. From there, we explored the transformation of bourbon from moonshine to a premium spirit. The early pioneers and distillers of bourbon were men of vision and resilience, who saw the potential in corn-based moonshine and refined it into a spirit that was smoother, richer, and more complex. They laid the groundwork for the bourbon we know and love today, a testament to their innovation and dedication. We touched on the dark era of Prohibition, a time when the production of bourbon was brought to a near standstill. Yet even in the face of adversity, the spirit of bourbon endured. Hidden away in secret stills and speakeasies, bourbon lived on, a beacon of hope and resilience in a time of uncertainty. In the post-Prohibition Renaissance, bourbon rose like a phoenix from the ashes. Distillers returned to their craft with renewed vigor, breathing life back into the industry. The spirit was embraced once again, not just as a drink, but as an emblem of American heritage and craftsmanship. Finally, we entered the modern era of bourbon, a time of innovation and exploration. Today's bourbon makers are pushing the boundaries of the craft, experimenting with new techniques and flavors to create a spirit that is as complex and nuanced as it is timeless. Whether you're a whiskey enthusiast or a history buff, the story of American bourbon is a fascinating tale of resilience, transformation, and timeless appeal. And that, my friends, is the distilled essence of bourbon, a spirit as rich and layered as the history that bore it.